Hello and welcome to The Lobby, GameSpot's weekly chat show here on GameSpot.com every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Pacific, or if you're watching this on demand on GameSpot.com or the YouTubes. My name is Danny O'Dwyer. I'm delighted to be joined by Mr. Christopher Waters.
Danny, what's up, buddy?
How you doing, my friend?
Good. Doing real good. Starting to get prepped for PAX South, which is next week.
Yes, I forgot that is a thing that's happening.
Yeah.
And Mr. Peter Brown's here, back from CES.
Happy New Year!
How are you doing?
I'm good.
What's it like to be back from the world of bedroom essentials and washing machines with LED screens?
It's amazing my lips are not chapped anymore from the dry desert air, and I'm not forced to placate PR reps pulling me aside to look at their newfangled rubber that prevents phones from, I don't know.
Well,
it's good to be back.
Rubber?
As much as I like talking about newfangled rubber, we're here to talk about video games.
Yes.
And a little bit worried about talking about games on the show this month because there's not too much coming out, but thankfully there is a remake of a Resident Evil remake coming out. Resident Evil HD Remastered. Which is the, I guess, the remastered version of the Resident... Is it a remastered version of Resident Evil HD, or is it that GameCube version that's now being brought out on new consoles?
It's a HD remaster of the GameCube version,
Yes.
which was not HD.
No, right?
Right.
So deeply
right.
confusing.
A little bit confusing.
It's the latest in a long line of Resident Evil games. Some of very high quality, it could be said, and some of rather dubious quality. We're going to talk about, I guess, the sort of our best and least favorite in the core, 6, but there's probably been about 20. We're not going to talk about light gun games because they're all unanimously bullshit.
Oh, come on.
That's not true.
You don't like to have a good time.
With light gun games?
I don't know.
Resident Evil? I don't know. Let's start from the start. Let's do it chronologically. Resident Evil 1. What are your thoughts, Peter Brown?
That was the first PlayStation game I ever played, and it scared the crap out of me as a kid. I've gone back recently to play it, only to sort of give myself context for the new version that's coming out. It still holds up pretty well, but I mean, can I talk about the GameCube remake?
Go for it, yeah.
Yeah, that, to me, is the best Resident Evil game that's available currently.
What makes it better than the 1999 original PlayStation one? Sorry, 1996. My bad.
I mean, this game the GameCube remake uses lighting to such a great effect, and at least if we're talking about right now, going back and playing the old one, yes, it sort of has that nostalgic appeal, but this game, even on the GameCube, still holds up. What you're seeing right here, I think this footage is from the GameCube one because it's 4x3. But it's, even by today's standards, it's a beautiful looking game. And if we want to talk about compared to the series as a whole, I mean, I think, yes, this is where everything started, and there have been some advancements that made the series a little bit better in some ways, but this game is still the one for me that encapsulates what it is to be a survival horror game. Some of it's broken with the item stuff, but you really have to manage all your items. It's really hard, unless you know the game like the back of your hand, to know what's coming, and it's just the atmosphere is so great in that mansion.
That game is fascinating to me as a modern case study for survival horror, because when you play that game in 1996 or years ago, whatever, it's not It wasn't. It was you can do these new things, like moving around in a 3D space, going from camera angle to camera angle. That was still pretty much the standard for how stuff would go. But now, if you play it, all of those things that were sort of on the cutting edge of things you can do in video games are now restrictions, and so you're actively working back into this previous era and restricting your abilities. And if you design a game with restricting what you can do, that's part of the game design. This game wasn't designed necessarily that way, so it's a different...
It was more of a needs-must kind of situation.
It's we can do this, not like, oh God, I have to, I'm a tank control, I'm going to try to take a headshot. Oh, you're too close to me, I can't. Maybe I'll just, okay, this is, all right, that'll work out.
It's weird. I guess without nostalgia, that game probably comes off as super rough. It was also on the sort of bleeding edge of taste, because I remember when the director's cut came out, I think it was a year later, it had stuff that bit where the zombie bites the guy's head off and it rolls. They hadn't shown that before because they were oh, people can't see a severed head in a video game. Right. And then by the time Resident Evil 2 came out, which was 1998, that game was kind of the Tomb Raider 2 to Tomb Raider. I always felt it was way less scary and more of just an action romp.
It's still, I mean, maybe you could say there was a little bit more action. It was definitely a way more intense experience because unlike the original House where it It was just kind of like you and like old crusty wallpaper and maybe a zombie here or there.
Old crusty wallpaper. That house was in very good condition.
Sure. But Resident Evil 2, I mean, you know, you're in this cityscape environment. There are like things on fire. You know, you're dealing with all these just sort of like, you know, lots of variety of things happening. Which, you know, it's that game still struck a chord with a lot of people. I liked it quite a bit, but it didn't feel as special to me as the first game, and that might be nostalgia talking even then, you know, for the few years that passed.
I haven't seen this video in like 10 years. I remember this blew my mind when I first saw it.
Yeah.
These games are really on the sort of bleeding edge of I'm not sure if it was graphics or just style. I remember thinking like these games they looked like nothing else we'd ever seen.
I think it's kind of the cinematography as well of these cutscenes. Like it demonstrates, you know, like the framing of it. Like it's not just like show them some cool stuff we can, you know, that has the most cool animations on it that we can cram in there. It's like create this dramatic tension with these camera angles, which of course this series has always done really well.
And then a year later, Resident Evil 3 Nemesis came out, which I always remember having sort of being more mechanically interesting rather than anything else, because you had that like recurring boss fight with Nemesis. He'd come back and like you were like taking chunks off him and then like trying to like not trying to kill him but just trying to survive and like run away from him constantly. But I didn't really play too much of it. Do you have fond memories of Nemesis?
I remember I enjoyed playing the game. I never actually got to the chance of finishing it. But yeah, again, like, you know, it's sort of in a city, like you're constantly fleeing, as you described, which is definitely something that's different because he was fast. Nemesis. He was fast and strong. He had a rocket launcher. I mean,
for an arm.
Yeah, like you could not be in that guy's way.
No, it wasn't for an arm. Yeah.
Well,
over the shoulder.
So yeah, I mean, you had to constantly just like be on your toes, and that was interesting. That was a good addition. But I think this series, like whenever it tries to add certain things, it begins to kind of like chip away at what made the original game so special.
And it's fair to say that the next game, after a 6-year hiatus, Resident Evil 4 was quite a leap in terms of gameplay, in terms of what the original 3 were. Almost indistinguishable. You could have said that it wasn't a Resident Evil game at all. That's probably my favorite of the core series. I think 4 was tremendous. It was one of the games when I got a GameCube, there were like 5 or 6 games that came out in that system that were absolute must-plays. And Resi 4 was the game that was the system seller for me, basically. Like, even today, this game I think holds up incredibly well. But with the cover shooting, the like over-the-shoulder third-person stuff, just creepy as hell. Like that first Resident Evil's really good at like those iconic moments. Like you always remember like opening the door in the mansion for the first time, and the time that like the dog jumps through the window. That when you see that spider, like the first scene in this when you're in that town and you're like using the ladders and like just trying to survive. You don't kill everything. Like your like goal is basically to just try and survive this horde of crazy sort of Spanish mountain people. Like I still don't even understand what the hell is going on there. Do you have fond memories of 4 as well?
A little bit. I kind of, as the series went on, I trailed off a little bit. But the over-the-shoulder thing, that was big, not just for Resident Evil, but also for video games. I mean, this game kind of made that a standard in a lot of ways. And we saw it, you know, iterated upon in like games like Gears of War, you know, where it's used to great effect as well. And there were other third-person action games, but that's kind of where people decided, like, I want this view more. Like, give me this.
And we got more of it in Resident Evil 5. It's fair to say after 4, I don't know, stakes were high, or that core series was just, even though there'd been a lot of bullshit happening in the Resident Evil world, although there have been other good ones, like Code Veronica was a pretty great game, that core series was still like pretty good quality-wise. And I think 5, perhaps because of the high bar that series has, fell pretty short.
Well, I mean, you can't, like, following 4, I mean, that's one of those games that just comes at the right time and is just so phenomenal and so influential that, like, when it knocks on to, you know, the next generation of consoles and into sort of, what do we want from an HD? Like, we basically want Resident Evil 4 again. And this is, like, you get Resident Evil 4, but, like, pumped up a bit more, and you've got 2 characters, and, like, you sort of have this Call of Duty globetrotting thing going on.
It had co-op.
It had co-op. I had a blast playing this game. You know, as ridiculous as some of the scenes were, as utterly stupid as like jamming a button to punch a boulder will like forever live in my memory. There's still those scenes like in that town where that executioner's coming after you, where you're frantically running around through these narrow spaces and like discovering which windows you can jump through, and definitely playing that not co-op was kind of vexing because the AI not quite as clutch as you'd like it to be.
Sheva. Yeah, I know Mary put together a list of the sort of best co-op games of the past couple of years, and like that was one that she mentioned playing and enjoying quite a lot.
Yeah.
I actually kind of bummed out that I did not play Resi 5 with somebody else because of those problems. And I think by the time 6 came along in 2020, you can just feel the toes curling already. In 2012, the bar was kind of brought down a bit, like the expectations, and that game still managed to fall way short of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dude, I mean, that was just like, oh, okay, we've basically got the 4, we extrapolated it to 5, but people, that didn't quite make the splash that 4 did. Still pretty solid. Let's just amp it up a notch. Instead of 2 characters, we're going to bring in all these other characters, and we're going to have all these other crazy scenes, and there's T-Virus going to go bonkers, or whatever it's called, whatever iteration it is at this point. This just seemed like, let's make this game more of a roller coaster ride and less of this kind of tension, this kind of straightforward action game. And it was just, I actually barely even played it because I watched Kevin review it a bunch, and it was dire. I
remember the Fallout when Kevin, I think it was 4.5 it got in the end. People were pretty pissed off about that, as they tend to be in reviews when it's a bit of a shock score. But within days of people actually seeing this and playing this for themselves, it was pretty clear that this was not a good video game by any standard. It's almost like they tried to make a Call of Duty Resident Evil game. Like, just the amount of action set pieces, like a bizarre leaning on QuickTime events that had never existed before in the series.
So many QuickTime events.
There was some in 4. Like, that's where it kind of started with the series. But, but man, I mean, even if it's not a Resident Evil game you're talking about when you're talking about this, like, it's just still not great. It's just all over the place.
Is it fair to say that is the worst Resident Evil, or do you think there's maybe one outside of the core franchise that is just slightly worse?
Yeah, the Operation Raccoon City.
I
think people hate that game.
Is that was the 4-player co-op?
That came out the same year. That came out the same year.
Yeah,
I think Jane Douglas reviewed that first. I think.
Yeah, but you're like these cookie cutter warrior, or I don't even know the story. Why is this a Resident Evil game?
There's an operation. It's in Raccoon City, and you have to shoot people, and it's class based, and apparently it sucked pretty bad.
I mean, when I first heard about this, I was interested because it's like, oh, this is clearly a departure from the mainline series. Like, it's in that world. Sure, it's a creepy place. There's weird stuff going on. You could make something happen, but the way this one just came together did not super great. Although I feel like 6 was worse.
Yeah.
That's how I came away with my impression of Operation Raccoon City.
All right, let's bring it down to a vote then. Let's individualize it. Peter, favorite and least favorite Resident Evil game?
Favorite's got to be the remake of the original.
Okay.
Be it the GameCube one or the current gen that's coming out. Least favorite, probably 6. I can with confidence say 6. I played a couple hours of that and really just hated that I'd spent a couple hours playing that game.
Chris?
Well, 4 is my top.
Okay.
Absolutely. That was a game, it takes a lot for a Resident Evil game to pull me in because I was so traumatized by the first one. It took me years to finish it.
You don't like scary games.
Right.
No, I don't. I'm so not down with scary games,
Yeah.
scary movies. They're deliberately just horror. Your world is terrible. I'm not down with that. So it's kind of a stretch for me to even want to play a Resident Evil game. 4 utterly absorbed me. I loved it so much. But if there was if it was even not that quality, there was no question of me even playing it. So I didn't play 6. I haven't played a bunch of them.
Yeah.
So for worst, I have no vote.
Okay, fair enough. Well, I'm gonna plunge it into 6. I haven't played 6 either, and I don't like making qualitative assessments on stuff that I haven't played, but the game looks like a real piece of hard trash.
Yeah.
So Resident Evil 6 for me, and I'd probably say 4 as well. But let's tie it. Let's say 1 and 4, the remake for the best, and 6. Taking home the dishonorable discharge.
Fair enough,
my friend.
Fair enough.
Those are our winners and losers for the best and worst Resident Evil game. If you have any thoughts yourself, by all means, put them in the comments and let us know what you think yourself. All right, we're going to be back in a second to talk about another returning favorite, Zelda, right after we check out the latest trailer for Evolve. There's another trailer for Evolve. There's so many trailers for Evolve. Here's the latest trailer for Evolve. 2014 was quite the year for the Nintendo Wii U, and it seems like 2015's got some great games coming up for that system as well, one of which will hopefully be the new Zelda. Peter, I see you rubbing your loins.
Was I?
Yeah. In my mind,
Wishful
you are.
thinking.
You're doing
Should
the. You're getting.
Yeah, there you go. Get that
Chris,
Zelda
it's not
rub.
happening.
No? All right. Peter,
Yes.
you're excited, though.
Yeah, a new Zelda game.
Yeah.
What's not to be excited about?
Dude, yeah. Open world Zelda? Yes. I mean, I didn't honestly like the last Zelda game I played that I enjoyed was on the 3DS, right?
Yeah.
The
Spirit Tracks?
Link Between Worlds.
All right, sorry.
No.
GameSpot's Game of the Year for
Yeah.
2013.
Indeed.
Spirit Tracks.
But like I played Skyward Sword and I felt burned right away.
Really?
It was like 2 hours of them treating Link like he is the most boneheaded subhuman to ever walk the planet.
Okay, yes, but I will stand up for that game only because once you get past that, it's a pretty great game.
Sure, a lot of people enjoyed it. Sure, I couldn't get past it. It's like,
couldn't?
hey, Peter,
No, I know.
remember this huge bird that you've been like life partners with your
Oh, yeah,
entire
yeah.
existence? How could you forget about it? You're so sleepy. Like,
Well, the new Zelda is going to, I guess, be more of an open world affair, which is kind of like Zelda has always had, like an open world, like a large world to explore, maybe in
Ish.
a more traditional kind of, old NES style
We're talking about
way.
the first game, definitely, yeah.
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 yeah, it's got like the hub world, and then the dungeons are like little
Yeah.
spokes off of it.
But obviously, the term "open world" now sort of means something else in like the modern video game language.
Sure.
So, what type of stuff would you guys like to see, Peter? First of all, taken from other open world games as we see today, like brought into the Zelda universe.
I'm just going to avoid the whole thing from other games thing. Can I do
Okay.
that?
Yeah,
Can
go
I do
for it.
that?
Yeah.
So, I mean, Zelda was sort of created out of Shigeru Miyamoto's love of nature, right?
Yeah.
And that game has always kind of toyed with, the outdoors, right? Open world game, with the Wii U, they're able to make this huge, expansive world. Things that, in the real world, if you were to sort of deal with an environment that large, you would have to do things like camp at night. You would probably have to forage for materials to make stuff. I mean, that's the kind of things that I would love to see injected into Zelda. I don't know that the main formula has to change. I mean, you could even adopt the same system from A Link Between Worlds, where you rent equipment, say, But yeah, I would love to see Link really sort of tied in with nature, and maybe even something like a real-time day-night cycle to encourage players to, encourage devs to do something interesting with that. With multiple instances of the same world, but with different things happening, and like have Link maybe have to set up camp.
But the Zelda series has always had like a sort of an interesting relationship with the day-night cycle. Some games have it, some games didn't have it in like towns, for instance. Some did in the overworld. But then you look at something like Majora's Mask, which was a game that was almost defined by the fact that like nighttime was a constant threat.
Yeah.
What type of stuff would you like to see Zelda universe do with like a regular day-night cycle? Like stuff like we see in other games where maybe it's easier to attack a camp at a different time, or maybe you can only.
Final Fantasy 15 is doing something where the enemies at night are stronger and different. I'd like to see something like that where they can things that are sort of recoil in the daylight might come out of their little caves and actually pose a bigger threat to Link. But then maybe the rewards could be better as well. But yeah, like I think if you could do that and have Link sort of deal with like when you turn off the game, like have Link set up camp, right? Or if it's during the daytime, have him go do some tasks, while the sun's still out. I don't know. I would just love to see some of that, and maybe if they could bring back some like boating or flying as well.
Oh right, yeah.
Like if Link, he always has a relationship with Epona and Skyward Sword. He had the bird. I mean, I don't see why you couldn't bring another bird into the equation, and why Link also couldn't hop on another boat like he did in Wind Waker.
Chris, you were talking before about the sort of the relationship with Epona and how like other games have used horse riding and like transportation to good effect. Probably Red Dead Redemption.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking about, okay, so what's kind of an open world? What makes me want to stay in an open world? What's an open world that I've like just relished being in the openness of it, not just kind of passing through? And Red Dead Redemption is a stellar example. I think one of the reasons it harks back to what Peter is saying is about that connection with nature. Having moments where I'm just like riding along a hillside and like I just want to stop and take in the view because oh my God, this is beautiful. Or like I see some birds off in the distance or something, and just like have a moment that makes me feel connected, makes me feel like exploration is a reward in and of itself just because of the design. Yeah. I do think that there are ways to use a horse that could be more creative and could sort of create those kind of emergent opportunities. Not a la Far Cry, where like you run by and some people are just in a fight, and maybe you come help them out. Or in Red Dead you have those too, where you like a woman's out in the desert and you go help her, and like maybe you actually help her, or maybe like 3 dudes pop out from her busted cart and try to shoot you. Like I think emergent stuff like that could be neat for the Zelda universe, because they've always felt, compared to like a Red Dead, I feel like Zelda places have always felt like towns are where people are. Right. And like maybe there's that one guy by that tree, but the open world doesn't quite feel as lived in by the residents of the world. And a lot of times it's like, oh, because there are monsters out there. That's the way they explain it. But I think that like having it be more lived in and having a little more character, like from the people you encounter in the open world, could be really neat.
One of the things that, and my experience with Zelda is relatively limited, I think, especially in comparison to you, Peter. Yeah. But one of the things I always felt, right?
Yeah, you hella limited.
Still rubbing my loins. But one of the things that I always find interesting about the Zelda games is that they are very focused on the protagonist, and the sort of thing that we see a lot of in open world games now is that often the world itself is the actual character and you're just kind of playing a part in it. I guess by definition of like his sort of, quest, then it's always going to be about him. But I always feel like they feel, not to detriment necessarily, but they feel like worlds that have been put out there so that so that Link can interact with them. I never get a real sense of place from a lot of these games, and what I'd like to see is perhaps what you see in games like Skyrim or Fallout, where you run into almost inconsequential like color stories, like side quests that may end up benefiting you in terms of like equipment you have or like your character, or they might just be there as like options that give you sort of a better understanding of the world, because the worlds in Zelda are always so lush and interesting and beautiful, but I never feel like connected to them. Just from your experience in playing other Zelda games, do you think that's a fair assessment, that like those games are kind of, that they don't have that much depth to them as like societies or places that people live in?
Yeah, I can't really think of a game that's really taken a deep dive into the culture of the world of Hyrule. Maybe that's because it's already established in a way, and we know. But it does change. It does change. I think like a good example from the trailer that they showed during E3 was Link just sort of hanging out on the hill, and you see that sort of monster in the background, and then he kind of rides up to it, and they fight. It's not exactly what you're talking about, but I think that at least shows me that it's a living, breathing world that's out there. And when Link is sort of interacting with this, this monster, it's not like a guy who's sort of like placed between him and an objective. Yeah. Given the open world aspect of it, you're going to expect these sort of emergent experiences, but hopefully that's indicative of maybe a Hyrule that's in. I mean, I'd love to see a Hyrule before it's all established, like as these villages are being set up, as people are learning to live off the land maybe, or, and then build their society around that. Like, that'd be really cool, but yeah.
Yeah, like a frontier kind of part of Hyrule. Yeah. Like, you've got the core, you're probably going to have a castle, right? But, like, the areas where people are, like, just sort of setting out, and like they just got bunch of wooden sticks around their tents.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like it without a castle, honestly. Like, it'd be great to see something that is really kind of primitive in a sense.
Excellent.
That'd be interesting. Yeah, I think that for me, like one of the other things that I think that places that Zelda could stand to grow is with NPCs, and is because you have the ones who they're like kind of silly. They're just sitting around. You come up to them and they make a little joke, and then you have the ones that are a little more substantial. You like maybe do one quest for them. You gather the lady's chickens, or and then you have the ones that are recurring quests where you've got a weird octopus lady under a mountain that you keep bringing her babies back to. I feel like I want to have some more articulation in terms of the level of NPCs. So like, give me someone who I talk to and like have a relationship with, and it deepens. And when I come back, they say, it's great to see you again. When I come back the third time, they say, hey man, how's it been going? I've been really having a tough time. And you get some more dialogue out of them. You get some more personality, because Link is not exactly overflowing with personality. Yeah. He's kind of a cipher for you, the player. So in order for there to be personality in the game, the world needs to have it, the people need to have it.
And then if you talk to those people enough, then eventually you get to have sex with them. like in Mass Effect.
Yeah.
One can hope.
That's the future of all video games eventually.
That's a weird segue into my mention of the Gravedigger from Ocarina of Time. Not somebody you'd want to have sex with necessarily, but a good example of an NPC in a Zelda world that has some depth, and you get to learn a little bit about him and actually feel something for him.
Dompe.
Excellent. Well, I guess we'll find out later this year. Join me, Peter. Join me, Chris. Do it. Rub those loins. And I hope you're all rubbing your loins at home as well. The new Zelda game will be out on Wii U later this year. If you have any thoughts on what you think should be in the game, by all means, put them in the comments below or send us what you think on the Twitters. We'll be back in a second, folks. We're going to check out a trailer for The Order, and then right after that, we're going to talk about PlayStation Now, the new streaming service, which has just been launched today on PlayStation 4. We're going to talk about some of the best games available on that service, as long as you're willing to pay the money. But first, The Order, 1886.
Nailed
Got it
it
right this time.
Little Bobby Page was bald, even when just 9 years old. Staying out too late one night, he came home with a bloody bite. Daytime waned and darkness dropped, all noises in the household stopped. Bobby awoke no longer him and tore his parents limb from limb.
This is for the players.
PlayStation Now, the brand new streaming service from the folks at PlayStation and Gaikai, is now available on the PlayStation 4, allowing you to play video games via the wonder of internet video streaming. There's about 100 games available on the service right now. It's costing $20 a month or $45 per quarter, and currently only available in North America. And I'm here with Peter and Chris to talk about some of the best games currently available on that service. First of all, what do you guys think of the price and the amount of games available? Obviously, they're going for like Netflix of gaming. $20, a little bit more than what you're used to paying for something like Netflix or Amazon Instant Video.
Yes. So for comparison, like GameFly is a rental service. You get discs mailed to you, a la the Netflix. Yes.
What's a disc?
Goes into the, well, it's too complicated to get into now, but that's like $16 to have one game out at a time for a month. And you can up it to a little over $20 for 2 discs out at a time.
Okay.
So the price there, it's kind of in the same ballpark. It's a little comparable. Obviously, that's a whole different thing because you have to mail. You'll get the 1 disc and you mail it back. You get, like
less
as opposed to just streaming it. So I don't know. Like I originally was balking at the price, but then. Peter, you had it up and running today, and I had asked you, even though I know what this service, I fully know what this service is about, I was like, oh, did you get that, did you get Street Fighter installed on PlayStation Now?
Yeah.
It's like, no, you don't have to do that. You just, like, queue it up, and, like, there it is, and you're playing it. I don't know if that, like, actually hit home to me until you were actually doing it.
How does the experience work?
I mean, so keep in mind, we're working with a, like, super fast, like, corporate building.
Downtown San Francisco, internet company, bandwidth connection.
Yeah. So, considering that, it works really well. The video, there's a little bit of compression artifacting going on where, maybe if some mid-tone colors are going across the screen, you'll see a little bit of blocks here kind of obscuring the details.
Colors.
Yeah.
What's a mid-tone color?
Like a gray.
Cool. All right. I dig.
Mid-value.
Don't play games with gray in it. Is the rule.
Whoops. But it's also not really that distracting, those little bits and pieces. And it's something that you'd expect. Like you mentioned, you don't have to download the game, or even if it's a disc-based game, you don't have to do any sort of installation, like some PlayStation games required. And you know what? The lag was, I couldn't detect any.
Really?
Yeah. I played Final Fantasy 13, Metal Slug, and Super Street Fighter 4.
Okay, that being a relatively fast game.
Exactly, yeah. And I play a lot of Street Fighter 4 with a pad, and doing so felt the same as it did on a PS3, at least to me.
Excellent. So right off the out of the gate, they have 100 titles available for you to stream. Peter, what would you say are some of the games that are a highlight for you on that service?
Some of the ones I just mentioned, actually. Final Fantasy 13 is a game I've been meaning to revisit for a while. Like that series really dove off the deep end. But I think the first game did some things that now I'm more willing to accept and appreciate. And considering that it's like a long-form RPG, right?
Yeah.
You know, if you only sign up for a month, that's a game that could keep you busy for a long time while you're sampling other things. I also, Super Street Fighter 4 is another game that you can just play endlessly, right? So for the quality of the game and the time you're allowed to play, I really like those two. But then sort of like a personal favorite is Motorstorm Apocalypse.
Oh, yeah, okay.
It's a racing game that no one's talked about in a while, but that game had incredible visual design.
Motorstorm.
Super fast, really fun to play. Like, that's one of those games that just sort of like disappears and people move on.
Yeah.
But like, no, that's a great game.
I love the first Motorstorm, and I think that was the sequel that came out like relatively soon after. It was like 18 months, maybe 2 years later.
I don't remember the exact timing.
Yeah. But like you said, it completely passed me by.
Yeah.
And you're right, if I had access to that service, I'd
Well,
probably
that
give
also
it a go.
raises a question, Motorstorm, because you want to race people.
Right.
You want to race people online.
Yeah.
PlayStation Now games, if it has online multiplayer, that's enabled. Like
Oh, wow.
that's all in there. But who's like, is anyone playing these games? I mean, if you go to Killzone 3 and you want to play competitive multiplayer, which is great, how many people are you going to go up against? You know, so
that's a good point.
That's kind of for me when I was thinking about like what games I would recommend. Even though I've really enjoyed the online multiplayer in a lot of those games, I can't really recommend renting them for that reason.
So you prefer the single-player experiences available?
I think the single-player thing is much better, and I think like I was harking back to my like rental heyday. I had GameFly for a while, but like my real rental heyday was Sega Genesis, going to the store in my town before. You know, when it was the local store, then it was Blockbuster.
Well, you didn't have Sega Channel?
I don't know what that is.
What?
What's
It's
Sega
basically
Channel?
PlayStation Now for the Genesis.
Really?
I kid you not.
What?
You got it through your cable provider, put it in your system, and you could just stream games. Over
No, I
What
did
was
not
the lag
have
like
that.
on that?
Oh, jeez.
It was not bad. No, I think it saved it to local memory, so it actually downloaded
Oh,
the game
you're
and you could play it
kidding.
locally.
Wow.
Anyway,
Wow.
sorry.
Sega Channel.
So what games...
Sorry, I got to get out of my Sega.
You know, just, when you're not using Sega Channel, what games on PlayStation Now would you like to play?
So I think one of the standouts for me personally is Enslaved, Odyssey to the West.
Yes.
Because that's it's a third-person action game. It's two characters, Trip and Monkey. You play as Monkey, who's this kind of brawler. Trip.
Andy Serkis?
Yeah, he's like this big dude. Trip is the sort of brains of the operation. You sort of save each other from basically being enslaved, and then try to journey across post-apocalyptic society to get back to where you're from. This is the kind of game that maybe is a hard sell for a buy for you, because it's like, oh, you're going to be done with it in 7 to 10 hours. I'm not exactly sure how long it was. But for a rent, that's a great one. Like, that's a weekend, or a week with playing a few nights. And it's got so much personality, and like the environmental design is really slick, and the combat is very cool as well. That one, yeah, absolutely, Enslaved. And then, what was another one that I said?
One game I remember seeing on your list, which made me laugh quite a lot, was a game that's based on any list you can ever create.
Oh, yeah, Spelunky.
Yeah.
Spelunky,
Of course.
the game of the year for all years. That game's just fantastic. And you should own it, obviously. And
On everything.
On whatever game system you can play it on. I mean, really, you should just buy it on Vita. If you don't have the Vita, you should buy it on PlayStation. Anyways, this is like Chris is always talking about Spelunky.
Yeah.
Why won't he shut up about Spelunky? I don't want to buy it. It doesn't look that great. Rent it, play it, love it forever, buy it, be the
And then buy
happiest
it on
person
every platform
you
ever.
can possibly imagine. And then there was a third one.
BitTrip.
It was BitTrip. Thank you, Danny.
I found this
God bless
interesting
you.
because I haven't played Runner 2.
So this, technically, it's BitTrip presents Runner 2, Future Legend of Rhythm Alien.
Yeah.
I think is the
I
full title, right?
truncated it when we put it into the running order.
BitTrip 2, right? BitTrip Runner 2. The BitTrip series was super cool. That's a topic for another day. But Runner 2 is, you're constantly running. And all you're doing is pressing buttons to slide, jump, kick, and, spring in order to get past obstacles. But it's in tune with the music, and the designs of the level are trippy. It gets exponentially hard. It gets much harder, and once if it feels too easy, you can rank up the difficulty real simply. There's a bunch of different characters, including a reverse merman who's like the head of the fish, and the legs of a dude who has just these huge dangling testicles, which are hilarious. But really, this just nails that euphoric feeling that rhythm games can have when like your button presses, the music, the level design are all in harmony. It's an incredible feeling, and this game captures it better than most.
Awesome. It's interesting we talk about this because we're bringing up games that we have basically all played. Like, if I was to think about one of my favorite games in the system, it would be Bioshock Infinite, which is available, which is probably one of the bigger like AAA games on it, which is one of my favorite games of 2013, one of the best games I've ever played. But we're talking in terms of these are games we have played. These are on our checklist of games that we hope other people should play.
Yeah.
Do you think that's who's getting this service? Or do you think, like, surely this is for people who have never played these games and want to, like, experience new games? Like, who do you think ultimately PlayStation Now is for?
Yeah, it's a difficult question because I think a lot of people don't really want to go backwards. They want to go forwards when it comes to games. So I don't... But you know, looking at the list of stuff, like seeing all that, these games I've played, like, yeah, I kind of feel like, oh, I can play it again on my PlayStation 4. Like, I always could have played those games again. But having it right there, having it accessible, and literally it's like, hit play, 20 seconds later, the game's there. You're like, okay, I'll play. You know, I mean, it makes it really easy to revisit the past. I have a feeling that that's who this is for, because I don't know who's going to pay money to have access to a buttload of old games.
Especially ones that are that old. Like, obviously they're going to expand this with PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 1 games. Do you think that's going to sort of be more interesting in terms of like a nostalgic trip than going back, 5-6 years?
I'm sure the nostalgia is going to get exponentially powerful when you go back to PS2 and PS1, of course. But it's interesting, to think about a library of PS3 games. Who does that appeal to? Does it appeal to someone who played a lot of PS3 games and wants to go back and play them? I don't think so, because I feel like that person is onto the PS4. Does it appeal to someone who is now getting a PS3? Like, I have a friend, loves to play games, but doesn't want to get a next-gen console. He's had an Xbox 360 for a couple years. Now he's going to get a PlayStation 3 and play all those exclusives, all that stuff he didn't get to play, and he's super psyched about it. If he could, when it comes to PlayStation 3, pay $20, sample a bunch of those, or, play through to completion some of them, or maybe, like, this is the way I was thinking, maybe it's useful as run through and sample which ones do I want to play more of, which ones do I just want to get a taste of, and then kind of be done with. Because just getting a taste of stuff is kind of the core of the rental experience.
Yes.
Right?
Just giving it a go and seeing it, and not being scared of having to throw down 60 and then actually, be stuck with a game rather.
Right, and then feel like, oh, I have to get my money's worth of this, or I have to take the hit to resell it, or something like that. So I think that could be interesting. Of course, am I going to pay $20 a month so I can try out The Last of Us, or am I going to try to get The Last of Us? Get
an HD.
Is it better to have? It's better for that reason to have fresher, more recent games. But for the nostalgia reason, you got to go to the back catalog, and then there are these games that are in the weird in between.
It's really strange. It's a new frontier for games. Obviously, something that's happening a lot in film and music over the past 5-6 years. So it's going to be very interesting. So if you have any thoughts on what games you would like to see brought to the PlayStation Now service, or games that are currently on there that you think we did not mention, by all means, stick them in the comments. That's pretty much the show for the week. But I got one more thing that I want to talk about.
Just one more thing.
One more thing. So there's this thing that keeps happening with Rockstar games, and unfortunately it happened again today. Rockstar have announced that Grand Theft Auto 5 on PC will now be coming out in late March. Obviously it was supposed to come out in just under 2 weeks' time. And this is sort of underscores a worrying trend with Rockstar games, because we were thinking around the office, like this... People were anticipating that this might happen forever, because this always seems to happen in Rockstar games. So I went back and started checking out just some of the old delays that have happened over the past couple of years.
You did some digging?
I did some digging. I did some researching.
Some sleuthing?
You may remember that Red Dead Redemption was actually supposed to come out in April of 2010 and ended up being pushed a month to May 18th. Not that bad, all right? A month. Same fiscal quarter.
Yeah,
so that's what I care about. That's what Take-Two care about, clearly.
It's so short. What were they dodging another release? Were they they just had to get that one more patch in? A month seems like what can you even do in a month?
Yeah.
Especially that now you can do a lot, but back then it didn't seem like you could really do that much.
Oh, don't worry. There have been longer delays. GTA 4, for instance, was originally supposed to come out in October 2007 and ended up coming out in April 2008.
Wow.
So that was almost a full 6 months. Again, within the second fiscal quarter. In fact, just a day inside the second fiscal quarter, which obviously makes a big deal for Take-Two and all of their cronies.
Is it really the second, or is it the first of their fiscal year? Because some companies, January through March is their Q4, and then the new year starts Q1. So I don't know. Like, I don't know if Rockstar does it that way, but I don't know. I just wanted to throw that monkey wrench in the works.
This is my fault for not having a clue about finances, really. Grand Theft Auto San Andreas was pushed back to October 26th instead of the originally announced October 19th, and got pushed back in Europe an extra week to October 29th. So again, just a week.
It's even shorter.
Just a week. But it seems like they can't go one game without delaying it. They just go, 7 days.
What if we'll
fix that thing? We'll take out hot coffee or put it in.
Put it in,
Slip it in.
Oh, sorry. So to speak. Of course, that game ended up getting pulled off shelves anyway because of hot coffee, and then put back out again. Here's an interesting one. GTA 3 was supposed to come out in the third week of September in 2001, and then obviously because of the 9/11 terrorist attacks, they ended up actually bringing it back in and removing some imagery from the game. It ended up coming out on the 22nd of October of that year. So apparently there were specific touches. I'm not sure if it's been confirmed, but there's word that they took out some sort of aspect of the Twin Towers that were in Liberty City. They also changed stuff like the cop cars were very much like the NYPD ones, and I think they thought that it might have been tasteless to keep them that similar, so they changed the decals on them.
Oh, really?
So that shows you how far back this goes. And then, of course, probably the latest one is Grand Theft Auto Heists, GTA Online Heists, which was supposed to come out, I think, June of last year.
It was supposed to launch with online, but then they're like, no, it's not going to quite be there at launch, and then who knows when it's going to come, and then, it's going to come with PC version, but no.
I think it's been delayed 4 times.
Yeah.
Poor Rob Handlery, who does some fantastic Grand Theft Auto features on GameSpot, like every couple of weeks. Like, all right, I'm doing my heist thing.
And then
he's like, oh, God damn it. And you're like, oh, it's been delayed again. Poor guy. So this is obviously something that we've come to expect, and even though today, a 2-month delay this close to launch for anyone else would be like absolutely insane, but we've almost come to expect it from Rockstar.
That's what's so fascinating to me is you think of a AAA game, you think of a GTA, you think of these huge games that have big marketing campaigns scheduled, and like they have so much momentum that when they set the release dates months and months, years sometimes in advance, that they're all trying to target here for like maximum sales bucks, success, whatever. And then GTA, like the history you're just talking about, like, let's just bump it a week. Maybe like next month we'll do it instead. You know what? This fall's not going to work for us. Let's just make it next spring. Like the length of the delays baffles me because how much it varies. But also, I mean, I guess is it a testament to Rockstar and how good their games are that like they still sell gangbusters, and no one has ever really come out with a story being like, oh yeah, that delay really hurt Red Dead Redemption.
Yeah. So the one consistent thing I think with Rockstar games, and maybe you'll agree with this or not, is that whenever they come out, they work. Like, they're generally polished, or they don't have that many bugs. And these are like games with so many different systems in them, like all the Grand Theft Autos and Red Dead Redemption. I'd say I think one of the versions of Bully was a little bit buggy. But like, these games work. So do you think perhaps it's something to do with just they hold quality control to such a high standard?
I want to raise an exception.
Oh, yeah?
Grand Theft Auto 4 on PC, the first few months when that was out, was horribly optimized and ran like garbage. Maybe they're just double checking their work, this time around.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. Like most of the times, like for such a complex world, like these things work pretty flawlessly. So I bet you, if anything, they're just double checking to make sure that everything is just like watertight, totally solid, not bunk.
Well, I guess we'll have another couple of months to find out, sadly. It'll be the end of March before we get to see perhaps the latest mod of Poonikins in GTA 5, or maybe that low-friction mod. I know folks are on the consoles are like, who cares? You can already get it on PlayStation 4, Xbox 360 and everything, but come on, we just want to see those mods. So
and
very,
4K.
very badly.
Look
and
at some
4K.
mods. Any of you don't have the PC to run the mods, you got the YouTube.
Exactly.
Go look at them. They're so funny.
The Twitch experience on GTA 5 on PC is going to be pretty good. So that's it for a show, guys. Thank you very much for coming on. What are you guys working on at the moment on the site? What's going up?
Ooh, well, I'm doing sort of a bigger deep dive into PlayStation now. Going to test out a bunch of different network configurations. Working on some stuff with the Alienware Alpha. Fortunately, I was sick for the holidays, but I'm back
Alpha?
and I'm stronger than ever.
Which one is that? Stronger than ever?
Yeah, stronger than ever. It's that little PC.
It's the little one.
Yeah.
It's not the big, massive, weird
that's the Area
hexagon
51.
thing. Yeah, that's fucking ridiculous.
So yeah, I'm
thing is
gonna.
crazy.
You guys look for that next week. We'll have a review up.
Was the Alienware Alpha originally a Steam machine?
Yes.
Okay. Just give me a little quick Steam machine update.
Sure.
Because I read something that said that like the Steam machines were going to be like officially launched sometime in like 2015, but you're saying that everyone else is pulling that title away.
Steam machines at this point are, well, there's sort of two definitions. It's any computer that, I'll say, you can put in your living room that ships with a Steam controller, which Valve is probably going to show off. Well, they will show off at GDC. And it may or may not boot into Steam OS, which is a Unix-based operating system that does not use DirectX, Microsoft's thing for Windows that allows games to look all pretty and stuff. It uses OpenGL. That said,
Quake 3.
So many games are not going to run on that sort of Steam box. So I think that's a factor, the fact that SteamOS is progressing at such a slow rate, and the fact that people have kind of just come to senses that a Steam machine is just a small PC.
Yeah.
And it's any PC that you can connect to your TV. I've been doing it for years. Millions of other people have been doing it for years. It's not some unique proposition.
Yeah.
So they're kind of dead, but Valve's going to show off their controller, and that'll be great for couch gaming, whether it's connected to a Steam machine or your PC.
Interesting. Chris, what are you working on at the moment?
Getting prepped for the Firaxis Mega Panel at PAX.
Oh, yeah.
South, going to be hosting
That's the week
with
after next.
the two co-lead designers of Civ Beyond Earth, as well as the man himself, Sid Meier.
Great.
Super stoked for that. And also getting a little excited to play in the Evolve beta
Yes.
on Xbox One starting in like 2 days.
That's open beta?
It is not.
But it's wider than
It's
the ones
Xbox
that have been-
One only.
Okay.
And pre-ordering gets you you unlock the third monster and the third set of hunters
Yes.
early. I'm not sure if it's open or closed. I think it might be open. Anyways, it's probably going to be pretty easy to get into it. I think you can.
Is this the first beta? Because there's been loads of alphas.
There was the big alpha last August, and then they've had little spurts of PC betas here and there. So this is their kind of big beta push. And yeah, the game's out in less than a month.
Sweet.
So.
Video games!
Video games!
Video games back! Or you could just play that Resident Evil HD remake.
Do
because-
the
Why
remake.
not?
The
It's probably
remake
been-
of RE.
Yeah, remake. It's probably been a couple of years since you played Resident Evil, right? Why aren't you playing it? Oh, it's not out yet.
I
When's
played it
out?
already.
Monday?
Next week.
Next week? Next Tuesday. Sorry. You don't have to play it. I think we're going to play it maybe before then, and we'll put it up on the site maybe next week.
Why
I
are we
think.
talking like
I
this?
hope it's a good game
I
because
don't
it's not
understand.
because they can't. It's not breaking embargo if I say it like this.
Oh,
Is that
yes.
game any good?
Yeah, that's your embargo.
That's my embargo
filter.
voice.
Yeah.
There's no
All
episode.
sensitive information must be conveyed to
Well, like that.
audience.
I can't believe Red Dead Redemption 2 is officially coming out. They've delayed the PC version of GTA 5 so they can put a Red Dead Redemption 2 demo in there. What? God, that would be so fucking worth it. New episode of The Point out this week on my end.
Right on.
Myself and Andy are going to do something about that loading screen. Did you see this? The Namco patent on mini games on loading screens is up at the end of the year. Do you remember
Is that in Namco?
Yes.
Yes. So
Because Konami had that as well.
No, it was
back in the day.
it
No,
was-
Konami had it
Oh,
as
really?
well. Yeah.
Did they have a game or did they have
Blades
the...
of Steel? You could play a mini version of Gradius in there.
You could play Gradius on Ridge Racer as well.
No, different publishers.
Yeah, but that was
You're thinking
was
of
Namco.
Galaga.
Oh, I am. I'm thinking of Galaxian.
Okay. Either way,
We'll find out.
Not Gradius.
Clearly, I have to do more research on this week's episode of The Point. But all that and more on GameSpot.com over the next couple of days, perhaps with a bit more facts and a bit less waffling. Hey, can't believe it. I'll just do it on Red Dead Redemption too. Thanks to everyone in the back for producing this week's show. We'll be back next week, same bat time, 2 p.m. Pacific, right here on GameSpot.com. See you then.